Welcome back, Booty Kickers. For this episode, I am joined by a new friend of mine, Amanda Soukoulis. Amanda, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you. It's a joy to be here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Likewise. And I know you and I hit it off right away talking about the fact that we are both dancers. So, for those dancers in the audience who are not yet familiar with you, would you share a little bit of your dance background?
Oh my goodness, of course. So the very first time I took a dance class, I was 18 months old. It was a mommy and me class. You
What?
could say that I have danced literally my entire life. It's actually pretty interesting too, because when I was born, all my toes were crossed over one another. And my parents, I'm the oldest of three girls, and my parents were so worried. They took me from doctor to doctor. One doctor said she'll never be able to walk. Another doctor said she would need surgery. Sure enough, I didn't need either, and my toes uncrossed perfectly. And I took those toes and made them dancing feet. And so,
Love
yeah,
that.
I started dancing at 18 months, and then I trained with the same studio owner pretty much my entire childhood. We won multiple national titles, all the things. It was so much fun. I also danced for my high school team. And from there, I really, what happened was I had won an award at one of the conventions. And when I was a senior in high school, and after that weekend, I said, you know what, I'm not done dancing. And so then I went and was deciding, okay, what kind of dance do I want to do in college? And so I ended up auditioning for Penn State's dance team, and how I kind of fell into that is time for a story for a whole nother day. But when I got to Penn State, I really just had the greatest college experience on their dance team. We placed in the top five, top seven every single year. We were very close to national titles when I was there. We competed in jazz and pom, and I got to perform in front of crowds of 100,000 people every weekend in Beaver Stadium. So got a little bit of the performance side, a little bit of the competitive side. And after college, I've just been enjoying the dance world and been training for professional teams for the past 4 years. And what people say, what someone once said to me was, Amanda, dance is your soul battery. And it's so true. It really is. And it's something that it lights me up. And I love the community of dance. And it's something that I have continued to do as a big passion in my life.
I love that. Thank you for sharing your story. It sounds like
Yeah.
dance has taken you to some pretty cool places.
Yeah, yes, I will say this is that I never thought I would end up in Dallas, Texas. And after I was a finalist for a few teams out in California, a few professional NFL cheerleading teams, a friend that had made one of the teams, she said, Amanda, there's a coach out in Dallas I think you would really like. And so I packed up my suitcases, I packed up all my bags, put it in my car, drove out to Texas with my mom, and I was planning on staying for 2 months. And it's 4 years later now, and Dallas
Wow.
has been home. And so I tell everyone, dance took me out to Texas, but the people kept me.
I love that. Yeah. I very much relate being new to Dallas myself. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about what you are doing now. So that's kind of your background in dance. Where has that led you since then?
Yeah, so I've always had such an appreciation for health. I grew up in a home where my mom cared a lot about our health, and so I was always physically active as far as training and nutrition and really just taking great care of my body. And a few years back, I was at what I thought was the peak of my health. And all of a sudden, I started getting all of these different symptoms. And if you were to look at me, you would have thought, oh, this girl is in great shape. She has abs. She has a lot of muscle tone on her body. She looks healthy. But what had happened was there were small, subtle signals that were telling me that something was not okay. And so I had started going from doctor to doctor. And the first thing that I noticed was that my heart rate variability plummeted. And if you're not familiar with heart rate variability, it's a metric for your nervous system that tells you how balanced and ready you are to take on that day. And so there's no range that's perfect for anyone. However, it's relative. So the higher, the better. And my heart rate variability had gone from being in the 90s down to the 60s almost overnight. So that's a significant drop.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I knew that something was wrong. So I went to one doctor. They said, yeah, we can probably order labs. The labs told me nothing. Go to the next doctor. Oh, just make sure you like cut out the dairy, cut out the gluten, you'll be fine. Went to the next functional person, and really it was just not getting any answers. And a month later, my energy plummeted. A month later, my brain fog set in. The weight started piling on. I gained 35 pounds almost overnight. My gut was distended by 4 inches, and no one was listening to me. And so what happened was I said, okay, well, if I'm going to heal, it's going to be up to me. So I had to become the CEO of my health. And that's when I did a deep dive into just functional medicine. And if you're not familiar with functional medicine, we're looking at the interconnectedness of the human body, how our gut talks to our brain, talks to our detox systems, talks to our hormones. Like it's all interconnected. And so you might have heard like the body keeps score, and it really does. The body knows. And so I knew that something was wrong and I wasn't getting answers. And so that's when I said enough is enough. I'm going to go find the solution. And so what we uncovered over the months was a bunch of different things that were going on with my health, connected to my gut, connected to my thyroid, my adrenals, some nutrient deficiencies, some toxins. And as we began to heal my gut, because that's where the root of the problems were, I actually got black mold. And so
Oh, girl.
yeah, and so my what I thought would be a 4 month healing journey turned into 18 months. In my head, I say 4 months. The person I was working with probably would have told me it would be around 6 months. It took 18 months, and so from that, I kind of said, you know what? There's a reason why this happened, why my life just got absolutely put on hold, and it had to be me so that I could then say, hey, you're not alone and there's a solution. And, I just felt so dismissed by Western medicine that I said, I'm going to go become part of this solution. And so from there, when got certified in functional medicine, got some of the greatest doctors around me to be able to really implement what is now my U3 system. And so I own a functional medicine and nutrition practice where really what we do is we help peak performers, as I like to say, uncover what's the root cause of your chronic symptoms. What do we need to uproot? What are those imbalances within your body so that you can get back to that life that you once had? Or if you don't even remember what it's like to not have good energy, we're going to get you to a place where your energy is so unstoppable that you can step into all that you were called to be and do. So that's a long-winded answer of kind of where my own journey has led me over the past few years.
That's a great answer and a great story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're
There's
welcome.
so much there's so much you said there that I wanna touch on. So first, let's go back because I think you said something that is so common in the dance world and so often gets glossed over.
Mm.
And that was that you started having all these small symptoms. And it's so interesting because as dancers, we are trained to be extremely body aware. And yet, so often, we're ignoring the signals of our own body. What would you say to that? Or what are some of maybe even some of the signs that, hey, your body is trying to tell you something, and to you, it might not feel like a big symptom, but like you said, like your heart rate variability dropping that much, that's significant. And yeah, that might not show on the outside, but that's a big deal. Would you speak to those kind of things for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. So as dancers, I feel like from firsthand experience, we're taught to just keep pushing and just keep pushing and keep pushing. And I remember I wouldn't trade my college dance experience for anything. It was so great, but we worked a lot. We were pretty much doing a full-time dance job on top of full-time studying for our degrees, and we would just push and push and push. And I think part of that is we're constantly in front of a mirror. So we're
Mhm.
constantly looking at, is our thumb in the right place? Is our arm in the right place? How does our head, neck, and shoulders look? Like all of those things. And so we're kind of taught to just fit the mold, right? And
Mhm.
what I learned over this process was like, in order to tune into the body, one, you need to be able to slow down, be able to slow down, be able to pull back, find rest. The hardest thing I ever had to do, if I were to go back and tell myself anything, it would be to find rest earlier on in my healing journey and to make it a non-negotiable. Because if you could only really perform to the level that you're properly rested up. And I was in a season, I had just been a finalist for the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders 2 months before my health plummeted. So I was this close to reaching a childhood dream. And then all of a sudden my health collapsed. And some of those symptoms that had I found functional medicine sooner, because I think I tuned in properly to the symptoms, but it took me much longer to find someone to partner with that could help me time collapse that healing journey. And so some of those things were I started putting on weight, even though I was eating the same amount of food, calories in, calories out. That's a myth because sometimes our cells are misfiring and they're not properly communicating. My body started breaking out in hives. My acne was at an all-time worst. I never had acne in my life, and all of a sudden I'm breaking out. So that's like some of those outward features. My hair was super thin. That was linked to some of the thyroid problems that were going on. I was waking up in the middle of the night, or I couldn't sleep through the night. I was exhausted. I needed coffee at 3 p.m. There's all of these little things that really just started piling on top of one another. And oftentimes we don't even know that it's been 5, 10, 15, 20 years of feeling this way. And I think that's the great perspective that I had because my health felt like it was stripped from underneath me in a matter of minutes. That's really how it felt. It was a few months that like all of the symptoms really caught up, but it was really quick. And so for most people where it takes 20 years, you don't remember that. No, I knew what it felt like to have optimal health. And so for it to be removed from me like that, I could really tell, oh, what were those symptoms that caught on fast? And really the brain fog was the worst of them all. I went from being so productive, so on point to not being able to remember anything. I couldn't do my job. There was just so many little pieces, but it was the brain fog, it's the low energy, it's the sleepless nights, it's the hair thinning. It is if you wear a tracker like I do on my wrist, it's being able to be in tune with some of those metrics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and I relate to a lot of what you said because I have been there also, and it can be so frustrating to feel like all of a sudden your body is breaking down and you have no idea why.
Yeah, yeah, it feels
Mhm.
like your body can be failing you. Which symptoms were the worst for you?
Oh gosh, that's a whole other story. Whole other story for another day, but a lot of them were
Yeah.
very similar.
Yeah.
All of a sudden became extremely injury prone, gained weight out of nowhere, no energy, brain fog, all the tests. Oh, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. But no, I wasn't fine. I think the biggest one outside of the outside, right? But internally, just knowing this is not who I am. I don't feel like myself. I don't think like myself. I don't have the energy that I should have. And this doesn't make sense. And this is really scary. I
Yeah.
think that was the biggest feeling. And, this brings me to the next part I wanted to touch on is that it can be so hard when your entire passion, your life, your career is all of a sudden put in jeopardy by these things. And then you go to doctors sometimes for years. For me, it was 13 years of going to doctors and feeling like a human science experiment, right? And we're going to try this test and we're going to do this scan and we're going to do this and maybe we'll try this and maybe we'll do this and oh, you need a biopsy again and oh, this and oh, that and oh, but everything's normal. And you're like, no, I am not normal. Look at me. I am not normal. Listen to me. I am not normal. And to just go through this journey of feeling like my body is not okay.
Mm.
Why can't you help me? Like I'm coming to people to help me because I know something's wrong. Why can't you help me? And that's such a frustrating feeling. Like I said, I went through that for more than 13 years.
Mm.
And it's a very crushing feeling to feel like what you love, in my case, it was dance, is suddenly stripped from you, like you were saying, and you don't know why, and nobody else does either. And the most frustrating thing for me was to have another test come back normal. Like
Mm.
you want answers. Normal is not an answer because this is not normal. This is not okay. And I know now that a lot of that is because they weren't testing for the things that they should and all that kind of stuff. But it can be so frustrating. And so, what would you say to the person who feels that way, who feels like, oh my goodness, I've just been on this journey and nobody's listening to me, nobody has any answers? What would you say to her?
Yeah, so normal does not equal optimal. And a lot of times when we're looking at lab results, if you think about it, they're looking at a bell curve. And a bell curve encapsulates 95% of the population. And most of the time, they're taking those labs based on who has already gotten their labs done. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, who's most likely going in and getting their labs done? If you're really healthy, there's a less likely chance that you're going in to get your labs done. So that 95% falls into what I would consider a sick population. Whereas from my vantage point, I'm looking at everything through an optimal lens. How can we really optimize your health? How can we optimize your life at the cellular level? And so I can totally empathize with you when everyone and all the tests come back normal and it's like, no, well, I know how I feel and I know that I don't feel great in my body. And so what I have to say to that woman is there are answers out there. The first step is awareness. And so being able to even just listening to this podcast right now, it's now opened up a level of awareness that, oh, there's something for me that's better than maybe a pharmaceutical medication. Oh, we can actually do functional testing. And what I say is test, don't guess. And I love to be able to look at a comprehensive picture of what's going on with your gut, what's going on with your hormones, what's going on with your toxin load. Especially as women, I find that we hold on to so many toxins. And that's not just physical toxins, that's emotional toxins, that's mental toxins. Like our body perceives stress all the same. And so awareness is the first step towards change. Awareness is the greatest tool for self accountability. And once you have that level of awareness, and sometimes that means bringing in a coach, bringing in someone to say, hey, this is what optimal actually looks like. And these are the steps that we can take. Because I know how frustrating it can feel when you're not getting the results that you want and you know something's wrong. And I remember I'll always be grateful for the very first practitioner that I worked with that helped me figure out what was going on in my body and that just sat there with me and said, hey, we have answers, we have a solution. Now here is the path forward. Because the data is great, but if you don't know what to do with the data, then what's the point? So step one is getting functional lab testing done and finding someone that is educated on a holistic lens of the interconnectedness of the body. That would be the first thing. The second thing would be partnering with someone with a roadmap that actually can help your body heal systematically because it's really important to heal in the right order. Otherwise, we could really actually end up making things worse. And so that's what it comes down to. I always say test, don't guess. Our body, it's not that the disease is going to be there forever or the condition is going to be there forever. It's that we just need to identify a way to create better cellular communication. And if we can help the cells better communicate, because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. If our cells are talking to each other properly, our body's going to be healthy and it's going to thrive.
Yeah. I think I also want to say to the person who's listening right now, all of what Amanda said, and also, you're not alone. You're not alone. I know how frustrating that can be. I know how discouraging that can feel. I know that it can get to the point that you're like, what's the point of testing anymore? Nothing finds anything.
Mm,
And I just want to say to you, don't give up hope.
yeah.
Don't give up hope. I firmly believe there are answers for you. There are solutions for you, and there is healing for you. And I've lived it, Amanda's living it, and you can too.
Yeah.
And so if you are just feeling frustrated, if you are feeling unheard, if you're feeling unseen, if you are feeling hopeless, I just want to encourage you that there is hope and there are solutions, and you are heard and you are
Mm,
seen. And that's part of why we are going so deep on this topic today, is to give you practical solutions and also to let you know that I firmly believe that no matter what the diagnosis has been, or no matter what the symptoms have been, there is absolutely healing for you
mm,
available. And it just takes, like Amanda was saying, finding the right strategy and the right solutions, and also some patience. You know, she mentioned that her journey she thought was going to take 4 months, and it took 18 months. And one of the hardest parts of healing can be patience, because the healing happens in the process, and we want to just snap our fingers and have it magically all be better. And it just doesn't work that way, or very, very rarely does it. And if it does work that way, then usually it's not sustainable in my experience. And so,
yeah.
just if you are on that process of healing, also don't give up and remember that the healing happens in the process. What would you say to
Mm,
that, Amanda?
that's all so good. And exactly what you said encapsulates that very first practitioner that showed me that there was hope.
Mm.
And she came to me and said, like, I am here with you. And that's where my heart and my soul is, because most of the time, by the time someone meets me, they've already tried a bunch of things and nothing's worked. And I say, hey, look, I'm living proof that there's a solution and that there's answers, and we're gonna figure that out. I'm not gonna leave your side until we figure out what's going on. And I'll be with you every single step of the way. And I mean that because I walked through it. And I I really thought that I would be able to re-audition the next year for the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders again. And I was in the thick of my healing during that time. And yeah, that was heartbreaking. And I remember a friend that I had trained with, she came to me and she had been battling some chronic autoimmune conditions. She said to me, Amanda, you're just in a season of winter. I said,
Mm.
I said, what do you mean by that? She said, sometimes winter lasts a little bit longer than just a few months, and that's what you're in right now. And she said it's necessary and it's so beautiful because right now you're rooting down into the soil and you're regrounding and you're repurposing. And you know what's going to come out of this? A beautiful blossom. And it was the most painful 18 months of my life. I will say that. It was not easy. It was not beautiful. It was not glamorous. I still didn't feel like myself. I didn't understand why I had acne for the first time in my life in my 20s, right? I never dealt with childhood acne or middle school or high school acne, and now I'm like an adult, right? All this weight had piled on me. I didn't like how I looked in the mirror. And I was like, I just don't feel like myself, but I have to trust that this is just a part of my healing journey. And you know, you can keep putting in the work and putting in the work and putting in the work, However, your body is going to heal on its own timeline. And so that's why it's so important to get in tune with your nervous system and to nourish it with the soil, with what it needs. And that's not just your nutrition, that's not just supplementation, that has to do with how you're hydrating, how you're moving your body. I had to switch up all of my training for 18 months. I had to change the way and reframe the way I thought about some of these sicknesses that I had been dealt with. And I really had to reframe it. I had to start speaking life over my body every single day. And that was so hard when nothing was changing month after month after month. And I'm like, there's got to be a solution. Nothing was working. And that's why I'm so passionate about this, because there are solutions. And just know that there might be a season of winter, but what comes after winter? Spring and summer. And that's just the circle, that's the circle of life. And so being able to really say, okay, instead of why me, I flip that to it had to be me. It had to be me. This is going to be not for me. This is going to be to serve someone else. And I'm so grateful that I was able to flip that lens, because you're right, it is not easy. And it could be so frustrating. And sometimes it could seem like I'm never going to see the end of this. But sometimes it takes belief, someone else's belief in you, in order for you to be able to see that change. And that's exactly what I needed in that season. And I just clung to those truths when it got hard.
Yeah, that's so it's so real. I think this is a huge, huge part of life as a dancer for so many of us that doesn't get talked about. I don't have the exact statistics to reference offhand, but I know that chronic illness, chronic injury, adrenal fatigue are all things that are way more prevalent in the dance world than anybody talks about, or than most people talk about, I should say, and then most people realize. And one of the hardest things about being on a healing journey is feeling like you're the only one.
Mm,
Feeling like, oh my goodness, like all of my dance friends are doing great and whatever. Why is my body failing me? Why is my body falling apart? And in my situation, again, which is a whole other story I've gone into on other episodes, but I was the one failing my body. I was so angry and frustrated with her for betraying me when really I was the one who hadn't listened. And I was so driven that I drove her into the ground.
mm,
And I know that is prevalent among dancers. Like you said, we just push and push and push. And when I was growing up in the ballet world, like the show must go on at all costs. Who you are doesn't matter. How you feel doesn't matter. What matters is the performance, and either you're
mm,
showing up or you're not. And, again, as a high performer and as a woman of excellence and all of that, I pushed myself harder and harder and harder and harder until my body finally fell apart at the metabolic level, emotionally, on so many levels, injury levels, like everything. It just fell apart. And I just think it's so important to bring light to conversations like this, so that if you are dealing with any of these, maybe it's, another thing that happened for me was knee injuries. And I was in so much pain in my 20s that I was told that I would probably be in pain for the rest of my life. Spoiler alert, I'm not. But I also remember what it felt like to feel like that might actually be true for me in my 20s, right? When, like you said, like you're not expecting these things, everybody's like, "Oh, it's the prime of your life." No, my 20s were real hard for me. And so if that's you, whatever season or stage of life that you're in, just know that it doesn't have to be forever. I love the way that your friend said to you, like, "Hey, it's winter right now."
mm,
Because I don't like winter. I mean, I know some people who do, but I grew up in upstate New York and I'm not a fan. I like the snow, it's pretty, but I don't like being cold. And I don't like being wet. And you put those things together and you have winter, especially in upstate New York. And so, sometimes we go through seasons of life that are not pleasant. They're not fun. They're not what we want. And yet, during the winter, a lot is happening beneath the surface that nobody sees until the snow melts and the sun comes out, and now the flowers can bloom. And so, again, the biggest thing that I would love, love, love you to take away from today's episode is yes, the practical tools, and yes, you can reach out to Amanda, and also just to know that there's hope, that you're not alone in this, that you're not the only one, that what you feel does matter, even if it feels like nobody is listening to you, and that there will be more seasons ahead. That this isn't the end of dance for you. I don't believe that this isn't the end of living your dreams and your passions, because I know what that feels like too. And so, again, whether it's a chronic illness or a chronic injury or whatever it is that's going on in your body that you just don't understand, like let this be a reminder to you to not give up, to keep believing, to keep hoping. A friend of mine said to me one time when I was like, "Oh, I want to believe, but I just don't know." She said, "Well, then borrow mine. Then borrow
Mm,
mine." So if you're listening to this and maybe you're feeling a little discouraged, I don't know why I'm going so strongly on that right now, but I just feel it so strongly. If you need somebody to help you believe that you can
mm.
find healing, that you can find solutions, then borrow ours. What would you say to that, Amanda?
It's perfectly said, is what I'll say to that. And that's so true. And that's kind of just going back to, I think about those people who came and met me when I was in the trenches, when I was in the ditches, and I was like, I just don't understand. I was just at my peak health. And it felt like everything got stripped from me. But I was just in a cocoon. I was just in a cocoon for 18 months. And as soon as that cocoon was healthy and it was healed, my butterfly wings got to open back up and fly and soar. So know that we're always going to be going through seasons of being in a cocoon. It might look like health, it might look like our dreams getting put on pause. It could be an injury. And I will say this about the injury piece: a lot of our injuries actually stem back to the cellular level. What is the health of your gut? What is your nutrient status look like? What does your toxin load look like? So sometimes if those injuries keep reoccurring, it's like, okay, it's time to look deeper within. And I will say, when you do find yourself in those seasons of winter, the things that helped me the most, one was morning gratitudes. Literally writing down 3 things you're grateful for. And don't write the good things you're grateful for, write the hard things you're grateful for. I am grateful for the healing of my body because it's showing me how strong and resilient I am.
Mhm.
So be grateful for those things. Speak life over your body. Every single cell in your body is listening. There's this beautiful video I saw where these scientists were speaking words of affirmation, right, over this jar of water. Then they looked at it very closely and they saw the most beautiful, like, pictures that were crystallized. And then they spoke death over the cup and it looked like a bunch of chaos. So this is what I will say, like, every single cell in your body is listening. And that was something that was really hard for me when I didn't have hope. But what I did was I borrowed it from other people because I saw, hey, if they were able to do that, I can do it too. And our mind body connection is so strong. So speaking life over it, don't isolate yourself. That's what I did early on because I didn't have the energy to show up for my people. It was really hard. I could hardly get out of bed. Like, it was just such a draining time in my life. And there were a few friends that just really said, Amanda, I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to walk alongside you. And so that piece of connection was so much, so much needed. And it was so strengthening for me. And you know what? Good sleep, rest. Your body
Mhm.
needs it. Sleep. As a dancer, as a performer, right? We are constantly we know how to turn it on. I didn't know how to turn it off. And so learning how to rest, learning how to slow down, learning how to just stop and smell the roses. Those are some of the little things that helped and that added up. And, sometimes just being able to have a listening ear. And that's why that connection piece is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know we could keep talking about this probably for hours, but I want to be sensitive to our listeners' time. So, Amanda, thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing not only your wisdom, but also your story with us today, because sometimes we need wisdom and sometimes we need to hear somebody else's journey. And so I
Mm.
thank you for sharing both. If there is someone listening who hears your story and says, "Oh my goodness, I need to talk to her," what is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me on the show, being able to sit down. I've never been on a podcast where it was two dancers chopping it up. So I love that, especially because it seems like we've walked through similar but very different journeys. And dancers just have this automatic bond that cannot be described to the outside world. And so I'm appreciative of our time together. And the best way to reach me, you can either find me on Instagram at Amanda Soukoulis, shoot me a DM, say you saw me on this podcast, or you can email me at Amanda at Souk Souk systems systems.com. Instagram, I'm always there every day. I check my email too regularly, but those are the two best ways to get a hold of me.
Awesome. And I will leave those links in the show notes as well. Well, I hope that this podcast today has encouraged you. I hope it has given you some fresh insight and even fresh strength for your dance journey. And with that, we'll catch you on the next episode. Keep kicking it.
Keep kicking it. I love that.